called us to the foreign mission field, probably started in both our lives at Belhaven College in Jackson, Mississippi. And we helped start an organization called the Student Foreign Missions Fellowship on our campus. And through that, talking with many missionaries over the next 4 years, we came to understand that God was leading us to go into missions.
We didn't have big expectations in going to the mission field. We were just excited to be going. We were young, in our 20s, and we were just excited to be going where God was leading us to go. So it was an adventure. I think for me, we stopped. We were going to Papua New Guinea, and our first big cultural shock was on the way to Papua New Guinea. We stopped in Manila, Philippines, so that Jay could show me where he had lived as a missionary kid. And it was hot and it was ugly. And I laid in bed that night and I was crying, and I just said, if Papua New Guinea is like this, I want to go home.
Our first assignment in missions was in Papua New Guinea with Wycliffe Bible translators. We went out to help work with missionary children. I was a youth minister to 150 high school kids from all around Papua New Guinea, Irian Jaya, with different missions. That went to a high school called Ukarumpa High School in the highlands of Papua New Guinea in the jungle. And Maureen and I were both house parents. She was a teacher. It was a very exciting time for two young missionaries.
I think one of the most difficult things in the beginning was we expected Papua New Guinea to be very different. The New Guinea people, their culture. What was harder for us was we were in an area with missionaries from all over the world, and they all have their own different cultures. And we didn't expect that. We just thought they all spoke English and we would all be great. And we found out we had to adapt to their culture and they had to adapt to ours. We weren't expecting that.
I think another thing about adapting to one another in Papua New Guinea, we were house parents and we had a washing machine that was very small and it would break down every week. And so as an American, time is money. I'd been taught that. But to some of these other people, what you do is you repair the washing machine every week for years. That's just the way it is. And I got very, very frustrated about that and eventually bought a new washing machine. But fortunately, I didn't do it the first week. We started in Papua New Guinea, and then we were in the foreign city of Atlanta, Georgia for 8 years. And then we went to Mexico City, at that time one of the largest cities in the world. And then we went to New York City, which is not foreign, but from there I traveled throughout Asia and Latin America for the next 20 years. So Maureen did quite a bit of travel with me all through Asia and Latin America.
You know, God used Mexico and Mexicans to kind of help me be confident in myself. I worked so hard in the beginning to be like them. I felt like that's what I had to do as a missionary, to try to become like them, like Mexicans. And finally, it kind of occurred to me, it's like, I'm not gonna be like them, no matter how hard I try. And instead of that being like a really difficult thing, that was like a light bulb going on. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna be like them, but that's okay. God will use me as who I am, and I can serve him who I am, and I don't have to be like them.
I think the things that Mexicans helped teach me was I had been told, and I guess it's true over the years, I'm kind of a driven person. I like to see results. and tend to, I don't like the word, I'm a workaholic, but I guess if you have to be one, I'm probably a good type. Yeah. So that being the case, I went into a culture that, they didn't in Mexico City always have siestas every day. I mean, but it was a slower culture. And I learned during that time, I think both of us did, that the good things in life take time. And as we look back on 45 years of working as missionaries, along with you, with us, it's been interesting that we've seen that over time, many hundreds of thousands of people, we can see them coming to Christ through new churches that are being started, but it's taken time. And time to God is different than how we look at time.
When we first went to the mission field, you had to have a verse on your prayer card that they required. And we, I was 24 and Jay was 25. And we chose the verse Joshua 1:9, be strong and be courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And I think I've just carried that through life. He's with me wherever I go. If it's a different country, if it's a different city in the United States, if it's, next door, he's with me wherever I go.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to our calling and having direction, it's been God's faithfulness. And the way that God showed us his faithfulness was not only through his word and through prayer, but in the presence of the Holy Spirit, but it's also through people. And First Presbyterian Church in Chattanooga has been probably one of the finest examples in our lives of the faithfulness of God through God's people, God's faithful people in the mission that he has called all of us to do. I think that, that God actually can use us was a surprise. I mean, I remember asking the coordinator of Mission to the World at the time, I was in my late 20s, a guy named Paul McCoyne, and asked him if I could help start a short-term mission organization within Mission to the World in the Presbyterian Church in America. And he said, let your vision be your commission. And then he turned to me about a minute later and said, and I'm not going to give you any money. And so, then I had to go to First Presbyterian in Chattanooga and some others and ask for money. So, you're just kind of surprised that you're allowed to do things and how God would work and how you would begin to see young leaders going out all over the world. And I remember we helped start a China partnership, never had the idea. I remember we worked, just talking about cities, we worked in 4 main cities in China, the first probably 11 years. And then we turned it over to Enoch Wong and our son, Jeff, he works with Enoch. And they went from 4 cities to now they're in over 140 cities in China. I mean, go figure, right? And I helped open up with the Redeemer City to City, probably 24, 25 cities in Asia, large global cities. And now, in 2 years later, with a new CEO, they're in 79, not counting China. I mean, we're surprised. God has surprised us because God's on the move in what he's doing, and we're just privileged to be a little part of what he's doing.
I think on the positive side, our children were raised in Mexico. Basically, when we went to Mexico City, they were 4, 6, and 8, and they spent their entire childhood there until they graduated from high school. On a positive note, they are bicultural. They're at home in both cultures. They are bilingual, and they're fluent in Spanish, and they are also sensitive to people of other cultures living here in the United States. They just fit in with anybody because they learned to do that in Mexico. On the flip side, it was hard for them to come back to the U.S. and to feel like they fit in to U.S. culture and U.S. universities and colleges. So that was a challenge for them.
I think there were two things in our mission career that it was what God was doing in the world and how it impacted us in the work that we were involved in the organizations. One was with Mission to the World. At the time when short-term missions was just really beginning, we had the privilege of being a part of starting Servants and Missions Abroad, which is the short-term missions program of Mission to the World. And that became, as it grew, that became a recruiting pool, those short-term missionaries. As some of them came back, they either got very involved in their local churches and helping send missionaries, or they actually went out themselves as long-term missionaries. A second had to do with the rise of indigenous leadership around the world. In the modern mission movement, missionaries sacrificed their lives, their years of service. The church sent people from North America to do mission work, and the children and their grandchildren of the people that first became Christians have now become leaders in all the great countries of the world, in the great cities of the world. And so missionaries, as we go out now, we are coming along and partnering with indigenous leaders. That has been the great thing that happened, both right at the same time as short-term missions began to rise, there was the rise of indigenous leadership. And we've had the privilege with you all at First Presbyterian Church to actually partner together with indigenous leadership over the last years to see God doing great things in and through them.
When we were thinking about going to Mexico City, and I was very hesitant to take my babies into the world's most polluted city. And the thing that God used, and it's not a Bible verse, it's a saying, a Christian saying, but God used that then, and he continues to use it now. And that is that the will of God will not take you where the grace of God will not keep you. And that seems very kind of trite and, well, yeah, of course. But at that time, that just hit me like an arrow. It's like, oh yeah. And also, if it's God's will for me to go, it's his will for my children to go too, because we're a family. And yes, I'd do it again. I'd start all over again if I was 24 and I would do it again, because I think that call of God on your life, it doesn't change. And I still feel that I will go wherever he wants me to go, and I will do whatever he wants me to do. And if it's Franklin, Tennessee, or if it's Papua New Guinea, I'll go.
Yeah, I think that when people say, would you do this again, going into missions, I don't think there's no hesitancy from Maureen and me, because we really wanted to be obedient to the Lord, and we knew our weaknesses, and we became very aware of our weaknesses once we got into missions. And I think the same thing would have happened if we'd stayed in the United States and were called of God to be here and support missionaries and missions efforts. But I just think that we've known he's faithful, and now we've experienced his faithfulness. And that has given us the ability, I think, that by God's grace, each day we seek to be obedient. And where we are is not the key, it's whether or not we're sharing the gospel with people around us and people around the world. I think that is, everybody needs to hear the good news and be discipled in the gospel. So yeah, it's been a privilege for us to do this. And I think that one thing that we have talked about is that we could never have done it by ourselves. If we hadn't had First Presbyterian Church, is the faithfulness of the people you people, our friends, we would not have made it. Not because of the money, but because of the prayers and the friendship, and also the encouragement when we began to take risks to actually go and do new things in missions, to work with Indigenous leaders the way that we felt God wanted us to do. That was really hard, but you all stood with us. You didn't say, no, we're not, we don't believe that. No, you said, go for it. And that's been a tremendous encouragement and privilege on our behalf.
I think knowing that First Pres has been supporting us for all 45 years of our missionary career, and that's amazing. You've supported us substantially financially, and then with prayers. When we've come home for the missions conferences, you guys have loved us and cared for us and made us feel important when maybe we didn't feel very important. Your clothes closet has clothed our family. And when there were times when we didn't have the finances to get nice clothing, your clothes closet helped tremendously. And, I think over the 45 years, knowing that you guys were behind us and you kept on being behind us for 45 years, that was a great encouragement. It was huge.
I think one of the things that I remember about in the last 45 years of you all supporting us, I know we shouldn't use names because then you forget somebody, but there are names that stick out that had a big impact in my life and in our lives. But in my work, Pete Austin was a great proponent, an ambassador for missionaries. And your church led the way in our denomination in that area. And then, he encouraged me, he and Linda. And then there was Tom McCauley, and Tom McCauley at the McClellan Foundation, when he left law practice and went to work there, he encouraged me in the area of working with Indigenous leaders. And, the list goes on. And then Sandy Pierce and I, over the years, having the privilege of working together, not just for a year or two, but for many years. And the deep friendships of First Presbyterian Church in our lives, we could tell a lot of stories, but they have had a deep impact in enabling us to do what we felt God was calling us to do.